Gus Fring explained. The polite monster who turned grief into an empire. The man who made revenge look like discipline. Gus Fring is frightening because he rarely looks angry. He smiles. He folds his hands. He speaks softly. He remembers names, serves food, funds community causes, and projects the calm decency of a man who has nothing to hide. That is the genius of him. He does not announce danger. He civilizes it. Gus is not chaos in human form. He is what happens when chaos has been disciplined, pressed, polished, and hidden behind a flawless public face. His central contradiction is brutal. Gus appears to be the most controlled man in Breaking Bad, but his whole life is controlled by one wound he never heals. He does not build an empire because he is greedy in the ordinary sense. He builds it because someone once took from him the person he loved, humiliated him, spared him, and forced him to keep living. From that point forward, Gus does not merely seek revenge. He becomes revenge. AMC's own description frames Gus as both an unassuming businessman behind Los Polos Hermanos and a brilliant player in the international drug world who built an empire nearly untouchable even by the cartel. That double identity is the whole key to him. He is not hiding criminality behind respectability. He is using respectability as the weapon that lets criminality breathe in public. Who is Gus Fring? Gustavo Fring is the owner of Los Polos Hermanos, a respected local businessman, a major meth distributor, and one of the most controlled antagonists in modern television. In Breaking Bad, he enters as the opposite of Walter White. Walter is volatile, insulted, hungry to be recognized. Gus is composed, established, invisible in plain sight. Walter wants to become powerful. Gus already is powerful because he understands that the safest kind of power is the kind no one can see. His dramatic function is not just to be a villain. He is a mirror and a warning. He shows Walter what criminal success looks like when ego is suppressed, not indulged. He also shows the audience that professionalism is not morality. The genius of Gus is that almost every surface detail about him suggests order. His restaurants are clean. His speech is measured. His clothes are precise. His business practices are efficient. His community image is immaculate. But the order is not evidence of peace. It is evidence of containment. Gus is a man who has turned every part of himself into infrastructure. The restaurant, the laundry, the distribution network, the public charity, the corporate relationships, and the cartel diplomacy all serve the same buried purpose: to make him untouchable long enough to destroy the people who once made him powerless. The gap between the public man and the real man. Gus's surface identity is built around service. He serves customers. He serves the community. He serves the cartel when required. He serves law enforcement with polite cooperation. He serves calmness to everyone around him. The real Gus does not serve. He waits. That is the difference most people miss. His politeness is not kindness. It is a containment field. It prevents others from seeing the amount of hatred operating underneath the performance. In public, Gus makes people feel safe. That is what makes him so dangerous. He understands that trust can be manufactured through routine. A clean restaurant, a friendly voice, and a charitable reputation are not decorations around his empire. They are part of the empire. This is why Gus frightens in a different way from Tuco, Hector, or Walter. Those men leak. Their anger escapes through their faces, bodies, and voices. Gus does not leak. His danger is compressed. The viewer senses that every smile has been chosen, every pause has been calculated, every gesture has been stripped of waste. But the performance is not empty. It is full of pressure. Gus is not calm because he feels nothing. He is calm because feeling openly would return him to the helplessness he experienced beside Don Eladio's pool. The wound beside the pool, the emotional origin of Gus Fring, is the death of Max. In the Breaking Bad episode Hermanos, the story reveals the decisive wound. Gus and Max meet Don Eladio, Hector and Bolza to pitch their meth operation. Hector kills Max and forces Gus to watch as Max bleeds into the pool. Eladio spares Gus, telling him that the only reason he is alive is because Eladio knows who he really is. That scene does not simply explain Gus's hatred. It explains his entire architecture. Gus is humiliated, robbed, and kept alive. That is the specific cruelty. Death would have ended the pain. Survival turns pain into assignment. From then on, Gus's life becomes an answer to that moment. He will never again beg. He will never again be openly vulnerable. He will never again let someone else decide the terms of his dignity. The murder of Max also explains why Gus's revenge is so patient. He is not chasing a quick emotional release. He is trying to reverse a moral universe. The cartel made him kneel beside the pool. Gus spends decades constructing a world in which they will eventually kneel before him. That is why his revenge feels religious. It is not simply personal payback. It is devotion, the mask that lets him survive. Gus's mask is not rage. It is professionalism. He becomes the perfect businessman because business gives him a socially acceptable language for domination. Efficiency, standards, logistics, compliance, customer service, supplier relationships, and corporate discipline all become ways to hide violence inside order. The Los Polos Hermanos persona is almost too good. He is not merely pretending to be respectable. He has mastered respectability so completely that even his criminal associates are forced to respect the mask. This is the key to his power over Walter. Walter is intelligent, but he is emotionally noisy. He needs people to know he is special. Gus does not need applause. He needs obedience, silence, and time. His mask also protects him from intimacy. A visible person can be hurt. A role cannot. The more Gus becomes Mr. Fring, the less available Gustavo becomes. That is the cost of the mask. It keeps him alive, but it also keeps him buried. By the time we meet Gus at the height of his power, the performance has become his safest home. He can stand in front of employees, law enforcement, and cartel killers because the mask no longer feels like acting. It feels like discipline. The lie that keeps Gus Fring alive. The lie Gus believes is simple. If he controls everything, he will never be powerless again. Every major choice flows from that belief. He controls his voice. He controls his face. He controls his supply chain. He controls his restaurants. He controls his employees through incentives, fear, and surveillance. He controls the cartel through patience. He controls Walter until Walter becomes too unstable to contain. The lie is understandable. Gus has seen what happens when power belongs to someone else. He has seen love murdered in front of him. He has seen humiliation used as theater. But control cannot resurrect Max. It cannot undo the pool. It cannot make Gus safe from grief. It can only give him more elaborate rooms to lock grief inside. That is why Gus's empire is both magnificent and pathetic. It is a monument to discipline, but also a monument to emotional imprisonment. He wins repeatedly, yet the winning never frees him. Each victory only confirms the need for more control. The machine must keep running because the man inside it has no other way to live. What Gus wants versus what Gus actually needs. Gus wants revenge, autonomy, and absolute strategic superiority. He wants to outlast the cartel, replace them, humiliate Hector, and prove that the men who once dismissed him underestimated the wrong person. His revenge is not impulsive. It is architectural. He wants the satisfaction of making his enemies depend on the system he built before he removes them from it. But what Gus actually needs is impossible for him to accept. He needs to mourn. He needs to admit that Max was not just a motive, not just a memory, not just a name attached to a fountain or a silent vendetta. Max was a person Gus loved, and losing him broke something that power could not repair. The show strongly implies, and later commentary confirmed, that Max and Gus were lovers. Reporting around Better Call Saul noted showrunner Peter Gould's confirmation of Gus's sexuality, while the series itself had long framed Max as more than a business partner. That matters because it makes Gus's repression even more devastating. His grief is not only personal, it is hidden, coded and buried beneath systems that allow him never to speak plainly about what he lost. He wants the world to know he was stronger than those who hurt him. What he needs is to stop organizing his life around people who already destroyed enough of it. The psychology behind his choices. Gus's choices are defined by delayed emotion. He does not act when wounded. He stores the wound until action becomes safe. That is why he is so formidable. He can absorb insult without responding immediately. He can sit across from men he hates, smile politely, and calculate the distance between the present moment and their eventual destruction. This is not emotional absence. It is emotional freezing. The Salamanca family triggers something particular in him, because they are not merely business enemies. They are living reminders of the original humiliation. Hector is not just a rival. He is the man who turned Max's death into a lesson. That is why Gus's cruelty toward Hector is so intimate. He does not simply want Hector dead. He wants Hector conscious. He wants him trapped in a powerless body, aware of every loss, forced to witness the slow erasure of his family. That cruelty exposes the rot inside Gus's discipline. His calmness can look superior to Walter's chaos, but it is still revenge dressed as order. The question is not whether Gus has self-control. He clearly does. The question is what his self-control serves. In Gus, discipline does not lead to wisdom. It leads to more elegant forms of punishment. The arc from survivor to institution. Gus's chronological arc is not a rise from weakness to strength. It is a transformation from wounded survivor into living institution. The young Gus beside the pool is exposed. He cannot protect Max. He cannot challenge Eledio. He cannot prevent Hector from turning grief into spectacle. The later Gus responds by eliminating exposure itself. In Better Call Saul, we see him before the completed version of the Breaking Bad persona. He is still building the laboratory, still managing Lalo, still shaping the system that will eventually make him seem untouchable. Giancarlo Esposito described the prequel version as younger and less fully formed, a Gus whose meticulous persona is still developing. That development is essential. Better Call Saul does not weaken Gus by explaining him. It shows how much effort was required to become the man Breaking Bad presents as almost supernatural. By Breaking Bad, he has achieved the mask. He has public legitimacy, corporate cover, and operational power. But his central belief has not changed. The wounded man is still beside the pool. He has simply built a bigger room around the memory. His downfall comes because Walter detects what Gus tries to deny. Beneath all the discipline, there is still a wound that can be used. The relationships that reveal Gus Fring. Gus's relationship with Max reveals tenderness, ambition, and the life he might have had. Max is the one figure who makes Gus seem emotionally legible. The restaurant name, the origin of their partnership, and the depth of Gus's revenge all suggest that Max belonged to the part of Gus that existed before the mask hardened completely. Hector reveals Gus's hatred. Their relationship is almost ritualistic. Gus visits him not merely to taunt him, but to keep the original wound active. Hector is the altar of Gus's revenge. Every visit says, "You made me watch. Now I will make you watch." Mike reveals Gus's respect for competence. Gus values Mike because Mike understands rules, consequences, and emotional restraint. But Mike also exposes a difference. Mike is damaged, compromised, and often morally trapped, but he still has a relationship with guilt. Gus has turned guilt into procedure. Walter reveals Gus's blind spot. Gus sees Walter's talent and usefulness, but underestimates the danger of insulted ego. Gus understands greed, fear, and ambition. What he misjudges is Walter's need to feel singular. Walter cannot remain an employee inside another man's empire. Jesse reveals Gus's strategic intelligence. Gus sees Jesse more clearly than Walter does for much of the story. He recognizes that Jesse can be separated from Walter through respect, responsibility, and moral positioning. It is one of Gus's sharpest moves, because it shows he does not only control through fear, he also controls through recognition. The scene that explains Gus Fring best. The scene that explains Gus best is not his death, though that is the most famous image. It is the pool scene in Hermanos. Everything about Gus begins there. The humiliation, the restraint, the forced spectatorship, the death of Max, the lesson from Eladio, and the creation of a man who will never again allow emotion to appear before power. On the surface, Gus is a young entrepreneur punished for overreaching. He and Max try to enter the cartel's world without fully understanding the brutality of its hierarchy. They bring product, ambition, and intelligence. The cartel responds with theater, but psychologically, the scene is about authorship. The cartel writes Gus's identity for him in blood. It tells him he is lesser, dependent, alive only by permission. That is the wound Gus spends the rest of his life trying to disprove. The most important detail is that Gus is not killed. He is spared. That makes him a witness to his own powerlessness. The cartel does not simply remove Max. It leaves Gus alive with the knowledge that his survival was not victory. His later empire is a reply to that unbearable fact. When Gus eventually destroys the cartel with poisoned tequila, the act mirrors the original wound. The cartel once used hospitality, power, and spectacle to dominate him. Gus later uses hospitality, patience, and poison to destroy them. That is why the revenge feels so complete. It is not random violence. It is symbolic reversal. But the scene also exposes Gus's tragedy. His entire life becomes organized around a moment he cannot leave. He does not overcome the pool. He builds a road back to it. What most people misunderstand. The common mistake is to see Gus as pure rationality. He is rational in method, but not in purpose. His systems are logical. His logistics are brilliant. His patience is extraordinary. But the purpose underneath is emotional. Gus is not free from ego. His ego is simply quieter than Walter's. Walter needs to hear his own greatness spoken aloud. Gus needs the world arranged so that his enemies understand too late how completely they misread him. Both men are driven by pride, but Walter's pride is hot, while Gus's is cold. That distinction matters because it prevents a lazy reading of Gus as the better criminal. He is cleaner, calmer, and more effective. He is not morally cleaner. His violence is less messy because he has outsourced mess into structure. Admiring Gus purely for discipline misses the horror of what that discipline serves. He is not a model of control. He is a warning about control without healing. What most analyses miss is that Gus is not only hiding criminality from the world, he is hiding humanity from himself. The wine bar scene in Better Call Saul is so powerful because it briefly shows Gus outside the machinery of revenge. After surviving the Lalo threat and navigating cartel politics, he speaks with David the sommelier. The moment carries warmth, attraction, and the possibility of ordinary pleasure. Entertainment Weekly's finale coverage quoted Esposito describing the scene as a rare glimpse of Gus coming out of the cave and finding basic human connection. Then Gus leaves. That exit is devastating because nothing forces him to go. No gun appears. No enemy interrupts. No operational emergency demands it. The threat is intimacy itself. For a moment, Gus can imagine being a person rather than a mission. Then he chooses the mission. That is the hidden tragedy. Gus does not only sacrifice others for revenge. He sacrifices the remaining parts of himself that might have survived Max. He wins by becoming untouchable. But being untouchable means no one can reach him. Why people relate to Gus Fring? People relate to Gus because he represents the fantasy of perfect composure. Everyone has imagined what it would feel like to never flinch, never panic, never show weakness, and never let enemies see the wound. Gus turns that fantasy into a body language. He is the dream of emotional invulnerability. He also appeals to people who value competence. In a world full of loud failures and chaotic egos, Gus is precise. He prepares. He observes. He plans several moves ahead. He does not need to shout, because his power is already present. But the attraction is dangerous. Audiences may admire Gus because he seems stronger than the messier characters around him. Yet his strength is built on subtraction. He has removed spontaneity, tenderness, softness, and ordinary joy from his life. That is not liberation. It is self-erasure. The fantasy of Gus is that pain can be mastered through discipline. The truth of Gus is that pain can also hide inside discipline until the discipline becomes another prison. The warning hidden inside Gus Fring, the warning inside Gus, is not simply revenge, is bad. That is too easy. The sharper warning is that revenge can become indistinguishable from purpose. Once that happens, the person seeking justice may believe they are building a life when they are actually maintaining a wound. Gus has goals, businesses, employees, properties, and plans. From the outside, that looks like momentum. But psychologically, much of it is circular. It all returns to Max, Hector, Eladio, and the pool. That is what makes him frighteningly human. Many people do not collapse after being wounded. They become productive. They become disciplined. They become impressive. They turn pain into achievement. Gus shows the dark side of that transformation. Achievement does not automatically mean healing. Sometimes achievement is the most socially rewarded form of avoidance. His empire proves he is extraordinary. It does not prove he is free. The legacy of Gus Fring. Gus lasts because he changed what television villainy could look like. He is not memorable because he is loud. He is memorable because he is quiet in a genre that often rewards theatrical menace. He made politeness feel dangerous. He made stillness feel violent. He made the adjustment of a tie more chilling than a shouted threat. The performance matters enormously. Giancarlo Esposito plays Gus as a man whose body has been trained to betray almost nothing. Small changes become seismic. A pause, a stare, a slight shift in tone, the tightening of the face. That restraint makes the audience participate. Viewers scan him for leakage. They look for the real feeling behind the customer service voice. Culturally, Gus endures because he embodies a modern fear. That evil may not arrive as disorder. It may arrive clean, efficient, professional, and branded. He is the villain for an age of corporate surfaces. He does not look like a monster. He looks like management. The final meaning of Gus Fring. Gus Fring is a man who survives by becoming less available to life. That is the final tragedy. His control works. His mask works. His patience works. His empire works. For a long time, almost everything he builds does exactly what he designed it to do, but none of it restores what was taken. Max remains dead. The pool remains the wound. Hector remains the witness. Gus remains trapped inside a mission that gives him power without peace. His death is famous because of the image, the damaged face, the straightened tie, the last act of composure. But the deeper meaning is not that Gus stayed controlled until the end. It is that even at the end, he could not stop performing control. That is why Gus Fring still matters. He is not only a villain. He is a warning about what happens when grief becomes identity, when discipline replaces healing, and when a person becomes so committed to never being powerless again that they forget how to be alive. Summary. Gus Fring is one of television's greatest villains because his evil does not look like chaos. It looks like discipline, service, professionalism, and restraint. Beneath the Los Polos Hermanos smile is a man shaped by the murder of Max, the humiliation of survival, and a lifelong need to reverse the powerlessness he once experienced beside Don Eladio's pool. His wound is grief. His mask is professionalism. His lie is that total control can make him safe. His need is to mourn and live beyond revenge. But he cannot accept that need because it would require vulnerability. Gus's tragedy is that his discipline works too well. He becomes powerful, respected, feared, and nearly untouchable. But every part of his life remains organized around the wound he refuses to heal. He is not emotionless. He is emotion buried under systems. Audiences admire him for his calm intelligence and competence. But the warning inside Gus is clear: self-control without healing is not freedom. It is a more elegant prison.